5 basics is what I always think and realize that people should know. What are these 5 elements of screenplay? Because one thing is people have a confusion with what is a story and what is a screenplay. They always ask me a question, is script and screenplay the same? So when it comes to story and screenplay, both are 2 different things. That's one thing that takes a young movie maker or a screenwriter away from a wronged process, because I always see that when a young guy who doesn't know about these 5 elements, he comes and say, the first scene is, he will show like this and say that this is the first scene and move ahead with that. Then I immediately ask him, are you starting with the scene or are you starting with a story? Stories have 2 concepts. One, story is an emotion. It is that story. Movies are actually stories. Screenplays are not stories. Screenplays are just structure. And stories are but emotions. So once we try to write a story, we should know more about emotions. Otherwise, you won't be able to write those, basically. So that is one. And then Robert McKee has also given definition about story. Somebody wants something, has difficulty getting it. So if these 2 definitions of story can be considered, let us say discuss about it later, but this is what I mean by story. It's about the emotional package which is there in while you narrate something. The narration is a different process. Normally, when you come after a movie, let us say Dangal, what is the story of Dangal? You can say it in just one line. It's about accomplishing a feat a man couldn't achieve in his life, he finds through his daughters. This is actually the story. The second thing is about characters, because the characters and the story actually build together. There is this great question when it comes to writers, which should come first, is the story or the characters, the chicken or the egg? This is a perennial question. And of late, I think it was proven that chicken came first, biologically and logically. So here, the story and the character has to grow together because they are complementary, both complements. So when a character comes, the character actually contributes to story and the story actually creates characters. So this is how the story has, by the time the characters come in, we always say that the story starts walking. The story has legs when you come up with characters. So in Dangal, again, what you think, when you think of that story, we actually come to mind the father who pursues his goal and the daughters who are being masterminded by the father or being inculcated by the father to achieve his goal. So basically, the story is revealed through characters and the story, there is also another great example when it comes to Aristotelian thought. Aristotle always believed that characters are just ploys inside a story. Characters just are placed inside a story. But when it comes to Layouche Aigri, who was contradicting Aristotle, in the Art of Dramatic Writing, he said, what is honey? He said, honey doesn't exist without bees. So he said, if there are no characters, no story will exist. So this actually is the 2 components of the track that the American cinema and the European cinema, or especially French cinema, takes after. The European cinema actually takes after characters and find the story in their journey, while American cinema is more formulaic and places characters inside a story. So these are the 2 basic differences. And when there is characters to reveal, characters, cinematic characters are generally revealed through their actions. The third element actually comes in ways of diction or the dialogue. Characters are generally, dialogue has 3 basic uses in a screenplay. 1, it reveals character. 2, it actually advances the story. Through dialogues, we can tell a story. At the same time, the most crucial, as I see, is the dialogues actually takes off the visual if it is not necessary or if it is not pragmatic. So if you say in a scene, if you cannot show a car accident, you can use dialogue to describe it as an accident. So dialogue comes in. And the fourth element is the most important, I would call. What is a screenplay is its structure. There are linear and non-linear structure. There are different aspects of structure. Structure is storytelling, the way in which the story, a good story well told is what they say. So when it comes to telling the story, there are two elements when you compare story versus storytelling, is all stories are linear by default, because stories are nothing but extensions of life, and life cannot start from your marriage. Life cannot start from death. Life can start only by birth. So from the linear order can be pursued when it comes to story, but storytelling can differentiate it. Storytelling can start from the end. There is a movie called Irreversible, actually starts from the end and moves towards the beginning. Or even Memento or Dangal is again a very linear kind of an emotional journey that works out. So basically, telling is maybe the master screenwriter has to always work on what best, or the decision to make what best the story can be told is by structure. In cinema, the fifth, you cannot avoid visuals. I would say the spectacle of this whole thing is by visual. We call it the spectacle of this. So spectacle is, when it comes to screenwriting, you have to create imageries and write the imagery. So how do we well write that imagery? If these five elements are coordinated well, bridged well, and assessed well, you are there to be a screenwriter.